I've actually been wanting to make this video for some time. So in the last couple of videos I've made, which you can see a link for in the description, I talked about the process of radicalization that was highlighted in the recent Netflix serial Adolescence, the way in which young men are being radicalized by toxic male influences in the Manosphere. And that is alluded to very clearly in that series on Netflix.
Never left his room. I'd come home, slam the door, straight up the stairs on the computer. I'd see the light on at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'd knock and I'd say, Jamie, come on, son, you've got school tomorrow. And the lights would turn off, but he never said nothing.
We couldn't do nothing about that. All kids are like that these days, aren't they? You know, you don't know what they're watching in their room, love. Could be watching porn or anything, do you know what I mean? Look at that fella that popped up on my phone. Going on about how to treat women and how men should be men and all that shit. I was only looking for something for the gym, wasn't I? You can't keep an eye on them all the time, love. We just can't.
But I do sometimes think we should have stopped it. Seen it and stopped it.
Clearly the amount of time that he spent unsupervised on the internet as a young boy had an impact on the horrific crime he eventually committed. And in my last video, I spoke about how these toxic male influences prey on vulnerable young men and boys and radicalize them, turning them, in some cases, into dangerous and violent predators themselves. But how exactly are they doing this? What is the philosophy that they're teaching them? Well, they say that the most important influence on the philosophies they teach young men is Stoicism. This notion of being able to remain calm and composed through the whirlwinds of emotion that people experience. Being the steady and stable one in the room. But you see, what they teach is a bastardized version of Stoicism. It's actually so perverted that it brings about the opposite outcome. A Stoic would never end up being a sexual predator. A Stoic would never commit violence against anybody, let alone women. But yet that seems to be the outcome of their teachings. And why is that? Because what they're teaching is actually the opposite of Stoicism. What they are saying is that to be a man, you need to suppress your emotions. You need to be somebody that has no emotions and can be therefore strong in their definition. The emotionless one. Emotions are for women. Men follow the stereotype that has existed throughout history in different times in our story. The idea that the strong and silent type, the stiff upper lip, the one that never panics, never emotes, and never dissembles. That is the man, the one who is immune from emotion. This, of course, is a totally nonsense version of Stoicism. You see, the real Stoicism has very strong overlaps with Buddhism, and the teachings of the Buddha and teachings of Stoicism are very clear that being stoical, which anyone can be, male or female, is about feeling the emotions, is about being present with our emotions, is about acknowledging the emotions in our body, accepting the whirlwind of emotions that go on inside us. This is what I teach, because as well as being a psychiatrist, I'm also a mindfulness teacher. So this is an area I know quite a lot about. To be mindful does enable you to be stoical, but that doesn't mean that you're not feeling things. It actually means you're feeling things more. You're more open to being present with all of the messages that your body is sending you about the world around you, about the context you're within and the experiences you're having. Being open in your body, being accepting of all of these different emotions. That's what the real teaching is about. And so when we can open ourselves up to all these emotions, when we enlarge our inner space by things like meditation, what we're then able to do is to gauge between them, see how we're actually feeling about things, to act based on those feelings. And what comes through when we do that is it makes us more compassionate people, more compassionate to ourselves and more compassionate to others too, because we are feeling the world around us, and that includes feeling other people's experience. It means experiencing empathy. By opening ourselves up to the emotions in our body, it means that we get better at empathizing with others. And when we do that, we are then driven by courageous acts in the service of others. So far from turning somebody into a sexual predator, it will turn somebody into a truly enlightened servant of humanity and of life in general. It channels the emotions that we have because you're more present with them, into positive, constructive, affirmative action. Now, the problem with the toxic influencers approach, one that involves sweeping emotion under the carpet, is that you can't sweep emotion under the carpet. You can't deny it. You can never avoid experiencing emotion. So the idea that being a real man involves not experiencing emotion is not only wrong, it's dangerous. Because what happens then is that we walk around thinking that we're unemotional. We walk around thinking that we don't have to worry about emotions. And whenever you try and sweep something under the carpet, what happens is that it comes up in another place. And so those emotions that are unprocessed and suppressed do come up in other places. And that's what directly leads to this toxic aggression. That's what directly leads to violence, to rage. And that includes particularly violence against women. So these guys are actually creating the opposite of what they claim. Instead of being emotion-free zones, they're actually emotionally incontinent. They're trying to hide away their emotions, but as a result, they're spilling it out all around them in the form of violent aggression towards others. But the worst thing about it is they're completely unaware of this. They don't realize that the real source of emotional turmoil is them, and it's occurring because they're trying to avoid their emotions. What they're doing is the opposite of Stoicism, and what it results in is the opposite of Stoicism. A stoical and mindful path is a completely different one in which we are in touch with our feelings, we are aware of our feelings, and we can make choices in this world based on what we feel. And you see, that's where the better definitions of masculinity and manhood come from for me. Because as I've said in a previous video, sometimes an attempt is made to define masculinity in terms that aren't really associated with masculinity. We all know what toxic masculinity is, but we can't find a positive definition. But here is how I believe we can find a positive definition of manhood and masculinity. And that is by looking at people in history who have really managed to channel that masculine energy within them and turn it into something good. You see, anger and aggression doesn't have to be a bad thing. If we can be mindful of it and then channel it into positive action, actually those attributes that are largely accepted by society as being male can become a force for good. Look at Jesus, for example. Look at his smashing of the tables of the moneylenders in the temple. Look at the Buddha and his journey to transform the world, forming a wide sangha that helped to change the mindsets of millions of people. Look at Martin Luther King and his march on the Capitol and all that he achieved. At the root of all of this men and many more like Mandela and Gandhi was anger, and anger at the injustice in the world, and anger at what they clearly saw was wrong and needed to change. And they alchemically transformed the anger within them into action. They didn't ignore it. They weren't suppressing their emotions. They were channeling their emotions into good. And so that, for me, is how we can describe a positive masculinity. Compassionate manhood. The idea that being a man, yes, can be being angry and can be being aggressive. And sometimes that can be a bad thing, which is why we always need to be present with ourselves to keep it in check, to keep those negative possibilities in check, because we all have them in us. But at the same time, if we're really present with those feelings and really present with all of our feelings, connecting to the world around us and feeling the empathy with others too, then what we find is they can be channeled into something really positive, into action that improves lives, that changes the world. And we don't all have to become Mandelas and Gandhis and Christs, but we can be heroes in our own neighborhood, in our own workplace, changing things for the better, helping our neighbors and friends lead better lives in so many ways. And that, as some of you will notice, is also the kind of thing I've tried to do in my life too. I have seen, on becoming a psychiatrist, if you forgive me for a tiny bit of biography here, a couple of decades ago, realizing that there's a lot wrong actually with how we deliver our services in mental health. We spend too much time just defining people with a label and then applying them with drugs, and not enough time really listening to them, creating a space to build a relationship. And there's so much evidence out there that the relationship is what heals, and yet there's so little emphasis on the relationship in the way we develop our services because it's become a technical speciality these days. So I was driven by an anger about how much wrong is done to people when the relationship is an afterthought, and the first thing that we think of is just the drugs that we prescribe. So I've been driven on a mission over the last decade to really change the system. I've taken positions of leadership and authority, I've engaged in research, I've delivered major trials, I've trained hundreds and hundreds of people to see a new way, a way in which connecting to ourselves, to our bodies, in order to enhance the empathy we feel to others, in order to then create a genuinely therapeutic relationship, is the best way we can help other people. As you can tell, it's something I've been very passionate about, so I've channeled my anger into action. And this kind of thing that many millions of men do around the world today in many different walks of life is what I believe we can describe as compassionate manhood, a positive version of masculinity. One thing to add here is that these are qualities that are in no way exclusive to men. They're qualities that might be associated more with men, aggression, anger, assertiveness, that kind of thing. But they also, of course, exist in women too. We all have these different energies within us. What we're saying though is on average, across the whole population, it may be more prevalent amongst men than women. That doesn't really tell you anything about individuals, because each individual could possess more or less of any of these. Now, some people suggest that we shouldn't make any distinction at all. But if we say that, then unfortunately it creates a vacuum that the right then fill, because a lot of people's lived experience is a difference between men and women. To deny that creates a vacuum for the right to come in and say, actually, our definition is the only one out there when it comes to defining what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman. So yes, there are differences, but it's not universal, it's not exclusive, but there are average tendencies here. And it's useful for us to articulate them in order to construct a narrative, a story, about what it means to be a man in the same way that we should do and are doing for what it means to be a woman. Now, I want to hear from young men out there. I am very proud of this channel and the people who subscribe to it and watch my videos regularly. There's a real community of compassion building up here. We're supporting one another through the trauma of Trump and what the world is going through right now. I'll be talking about membership soon, where I'll be offering more to some people in terms of genuine support, psychological and otherwise, to help us through this. But I also want this to be a channel for young men, to help those who are struggling and vulnerable right now, to find a better way than the toxic influences there are right now. So what I ask, please share this video if you want to share this video with young men that you know in your life, with your children, with your grandchildren and others, with nephews and other young men. So at least they can hear this sense that there is a different way of being a man in the world today. And I want to hear from them in the comments, please. If you're a young man and you've just received this video from somebody and you've watched it, please put something in the comments, because what I want to hear from you is what you think and what you think will help, what you think can make a difference to telling a different story of what it is to be a man. How can we help change this story? Because the toxic manosphere is a battleship. It's huge and it's sucking in lives, life after life. I have a young boy myself. He's only very small right now, but I'm scared of what might happen to him as he grows into adolescence, as I believe all parents of young boys are today. So let's have this conversation. Let's find out what we can do. Let's find out how we can create a different pipeline to inspire, embolden, and enhance young men and help them follow the heroic trajectory that is their birthright, to empathize, to connect, and to really help and heal the world through our energy, which we can offer in the service of others.